buildinggreenwichct.com.
Good morning, Greenwich. Welcome to Building Greenwich. I'm your host, Lindsay Potter, here with my co-host, Scott Elwell.
Good morning.
And we'd like to welcome Erin Keys to the show this morning. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you.
So now, Erin, you are the executive director of the Center for Hope and Renewal, which is here in Greenwich. And we're just thrilled to, first of all, have you on to talk more about what the center provides for people in our community. And so I'm just going to let you tell us, because I only know what I've been reading and watching, but I know that there's so much more to it. So what is the Center for Hope and Renewal, and what is your role?
So the Center for Hope and Renewal was founded in 2007 by Stanwich Congregational Church, and we're still located in the old Stanwich Church building. And they founded the center out of a desire to provide mental health services for the Greenwich community for as many people as possible. As a pastor myself, we often get members of our congregation who come to us and they have needs that extend beyond our ability to care for them.
Right.
And so Stanwich, recognizing that, said we could better serve our community if we had a counseling center in town. So that's how we got started.
Smart.
And over the years, so we've been around for over 15 years now, and we have a staff of 11 therapists, and we also do training for professional therapists. So we do something called emotionally focused therapy training, which is extremely effective for couples and families to help heal attachment wounds, improve communication, and overall just have higher quality relationships. So we do that training, and then, like I said, we have 11 therapists who treat all types of situations. We work with couples, families, individuals, anxiety, depression. We see children, adolescents. We have an eating disorder specialist on staff.
Wow.
We have a couple of grief specialists. We have a trauma specialist. So we really try to meet the full spectrum of mental health needs in our community.
That's amazing. And you had mentioned that you have, I was asking you earlier before we got on the air about what it looks like for someone like me in the community who is looking for the help of the therapist. So if I were to come in and say I had a budget to spend on it, you have a fund, the Hope Fund, am I right?
Yeah.
That is donor funded, that supports people who wouldn't necessarily be able to afford I mean, I know that the cost of therapy is pretty high.
It's very high, particularly in this area, like everything else.
Right. Yeah.
So, yes.
Eggs.
Eggs. So say someone comes into the center or gives us a call. Usually their first point of contact is me, unless they already know one of the other therapists. But generally, I'm the first point of contact, and I have a conversation with them about their mental health needs. What are they looking for? What have they done in the past? What's worked? What hasn't? And from that conversation, I match them with one of our therapists based on their experience, qualifications, and availability. I also talk about payment, to your question. So we don't accept insurance right now. It's something that we have started exploring simply because we want to be able to serve as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But in place of accepting insurance right now, we do have the Hope Fund. And that's a donor-supported fund that allows us to offset the cost of therapy for anybody who needs it. So in order to receive that, the client just needs to tell me they'd like to apply for it. And in order to apply for it, all they have to do is verify their income level. We do that just to make sure all of our boxes are checked.
Yeah.
And then from that application, we compare it to our sliding scale, and we offer them a reduced fee based on that. We do take into account extenuating circumstances. As we all know, people can look a certain way on paper, and the reality is very different. So we take all of the whole picture into consideration when we make that determination. And then we offer them a reduced fee, and we make sure that fee is comfortable with them before, we do our first therapy session or get started.
I love that. And are most of the people that you're working with right now a part of the Stanwich congregation, or are they from anywhere in the community?
So they're from all over the community.
Okay.
We have close ties with Stanwich, obviously, because they've supported us. But we serve all people. So we are certainly faith-friendly to anyone who's looking to incorporate their faith, whether it be Christian, Jewish, Hindu, whatever it might be. We support that aspect of a person's healing journey. But we also treat people for whom religion is not something that they want to incorporate into their therapy.
Great. I love that.
So it's really the church that got it started.
It's the church that got it started.
For everybody, not just the congregation of the church.
Absolutely, yes, for the entire Greenwich community. Yeah.
I love that they did that.
And how did that start, I guess? I mean, diving back, you said about 15 years ago?
Yeah.
And so was it just a group of people within the church that realized the need and they decided to, incorporate this? Or, I mean, how did it?
Well, it was a movement within the church, particularly Reverend Neely Tao, who was a pastor at Stanwich Church during that time. Neely saw the need because parishioners were coming to her for pastoral care that was beyond her level of expertise. So she saw the need to have a center in town where the therapists were highly regarded and it was accessible. Yeah. And so she wanted to create that. She started having that congregation within the church, and the church started having a larger congregation about what is our mission, how can we better serve our community. And so from Neely's observations and passion and Stanwich congregation support, the center was born.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It really is nice. Now let's talk a little bit about you. You are a pastor, correct?
Yes.
And how long have you been have you had that title? Have you been doing that work?
Pretty much my whole career.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went straight to seminary after college, got my master's degree, and moved to Manhattan and started working at the Brick Presbyterian Church in 2010.
Oh, great.
And then I came up to Greenwich and started working at First Pres Greenwich. I was there for about 7 years. Then I was a pastor at Capitol Hill Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C. For 3 years. And I did that right before coming up here in 2020.
That's great. And I know that, well, we were talking about it again before we got on air, but I had watched a few clips of you at the White House. Mm-hmm. It was, would you call it preaching at the White House? It was really just in support of what was going on in 2020.
Yeah. So one of the things that is really nice about being a few blocks from Congress is that the chaplain to the House of Representatives, whenever he wasn't available, they would call local clergy to come in and pray with members of Congress prior to any session starting. So that's like something that has to happen prior to any formal session.
Oh, really?
Is a prayer. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so it happens in the Senate too, and then in the House of Representatives, which is where I was.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Have you done that before, or was the? I mean,
so I had done it
before.
before.
Big gut check, I guess, right? I mean,
it was definitely.
You can lift those up.
Oh, thanks. I'm like, what's happening?
No,
here?
I know. Sometimes they can slide.
They
Anyway.
tighten up the top.
So hold on just a second.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's why editing was invented.
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
We'll leave that.
I'm like used to preaching where you don't get to like stop and take a break. Anyway, so yes, it was. I had not done it prior to moving to DC, obviously, but the first time I did it, you're just walking in there like, oh my gosh, this is where the State of the Union happens.
Wild.
This is where the president stands. I'm right here. Like it's
cameras everywhere.
Yeah, cameras. I mean, there's
I've never
people
been
up in the
invited
galley.
into that room,
Yeah,
so I think it's a little different.
it's very, very cool. It's obviously an extreme honor. So it was a really special part of my time in DC.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I mean, was it a last minute phone call that like we need you in a half hour?
Yeah. Often the assistant chaplain would be like, he can't be there today. Can you run over?
Wow.
So
I didn't realize they had to. Every session that they start.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, and you have to submit your prayer ahead of time because it gets entered into the official record. So
every word out of your mouth is already written.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to leave.
Is that natural for you?
Open. Yes and no. A lot of churches I've served have been pretty formal, and so we would write out our prayers ahead of time. However, I'm also very comfortable praying kind of off the top of my head.
Well, I mean, speaking in public, I always have to do it a little more off the cuff, like with bullet points. I mean, if I'm reading, it felt read, but I assume you've only done this a couple 100,000 times.
Well, it helps when it's a prayer because nobody's looking at you.
Fair enough. Okay.
So now, as the executive director of the Center for Hope and Renewal, are you still acting as a pastor as well? Are you double duty?
Yeah, so I'm not serving a congregation right now, but I do still preach at various churches around town whenever they need someone to step in. And I also lead workshops and like classes and stuff for clergy, kind of based
Okay,
on
awesome.
request.
Well, that actually was a question that I wanted to ask you. Are there any group programs at the center for like grief groups or something like that to that effect that people could join?
Yes. So we twice a year usually run a grief group. Our therapist, Nancy Sadock, tends to head that up.
Okay.
So we offer that. We have an addiction group that's being run right now by one of our therapists, and we also have a group for women who are going through divorce.
Okay. And are those, how do you charge for those? How does that work?
So, I mean, again, we really try to work with our clients as to what they can afford.
Right.
And we figure out something that, gets the therapist paid for their time, but also is very doable to people. So often it'll be something like $50 per meeting or less, again, just kind of depending on how many people and how long they want to meet.
I just want to give people an idea of what these things would look like for them if they were interested in joining.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, we want it to be accessible.
Right.
It's the most important thing to me, and I know it's the most important thing to our therapists. So if anyone's ever concerned about the cost, they can reach out to me directly, and we'll work something out.
Now, the therapists that you have, how many?
We have 11.
Oh, and those are full-time with you? Or they share their time with other practices?
It's a mix of full-time and part-time. We have a few therapists who also are social workers in the Stanford school system.
Okay.
And so they are doing that kind of during, their 9 to 5, and then they're at the center seeing clients before and after school. So we have a few people who do that. The rest of them are full-time, and they're there. We have a mix of people being in the office, seeing folks in person, and then also doing teletherapy. As you know, post-COVID, teletherapy is huge.
Huge, yeah. My next thought was, what was the, I don't want to ask percentage-wise, but what was the general rise in demand for mental health professionals since 2020? Because I know we all know how much it affected all of us, but as a professional leading a group of professionals, what did you see? What have you seen in this past 4 years shift in our community?
Well, I think the biggest shift is that people are okay talking about the need for mental health.
Yes.
That's been huge. Yeah. And so now that it has become part of kind of routine conversation, it's something everyone acknowledges as a need we have. It has been a lot easier to just talk about it, whether I'm in church, preaching for some congregation, or if it's just in conversations I have with people around town. Whereas I think in the past, there might have been more guardedness around the topic. People immediately go, "Oh, you work with therapists. Let me tell you about this." And like, I have a friend, and how do I get in touch with you? So I think it's something we've needed for a long time, but we've been kind of ashamed to admit that we need.
I totally agree. And it's become a part of the vernacular now. Everyone has a therapist. Mm-hmm. I mean, not everyone, but most people, I have to talk to my therapist about that. It's not an abnormal thing. Like, you must have something wrong. You have a therapist. Mm-hmm. You're a very normal person who wants to talk to someone about issues that you're not necessarily comfortable talking to a family member or a friend about, because there are things that that are sacred to you that you need someone's professional opinion on or advice. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And having a more objective source outside of our relationship systems can be key to help us observe ourselves. How are we functioning? What are we doing that's in our best interest and sort of the highest potential of operating as a human being? And what are we not? Like, how are we contributing to our own dysfunction or our unhappiness, stress, and anxiety?
I know.
Totally.
I know. I do coaching and working with some of my clients that have therapists as well as a coach, because therapy is really more of the detangling of your past, where coaching is more of the creation of your future. But there is a little bit of a gray area there, because it's hard to work with a therapist and not talk about how you want to be in your future, just like it's hard to work with a coach and not talk about what happened in your past that got you to where you are today. So it's funny. So at the Center for Hope and Renewal, if someone in our community who doesn't know about the center, which is why we're doing this interview really, to share it with our community, is interested in working with the center, what process do they go through to get involved?
So generally they reach out to me first, like I mentioned, and we have a conversation. And I really try to get a sense of who they are and what they need. And then I match them with a therapist.
Okay.
At that point, the therapist reaches out to the client to schedule a consultation call. That's completely complimentary, and it's a 15 or 20-minute call that gives the client and the therapist a chance to get to know each other and make sure that it's going to be a good fit. The number one factor in therapy being successful is the quality of the relationship between the client and the therapist.
Right.
You can have all the training and expertise in the world, but if there's not a chemistry between you as the therapist and the client, it's not going to work.
Yes, completely
and so
agree.
we offer that consultation call in an effort to make sure that our clients aren't wasting their time. Because we know that when you call and reach out for mental health support, it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of courage to then take the next step and meet with the therapist. And we know people are in a vulnerable position, and so we want to come alongside them and support them as best as we can in that process.
And do you ask them ahead of time, say Scott's calling, do you want to work with a male or a female? Do you want, okay. Like I would prefer to work with someone that's a mother, for example. I know when I hired a coach years ago, I really wanted someone that had children because I was in this place personally where I needed them to understand what that felt like for my career and what I wanted to work with them on.
Yeah.
And I know that it's so personal. It's like choosing a doctor, but I mean, it is choosing a doctor, but in a different way, shape, and form.
Yeah.
So those are questions that you would probe, or okay.
Yes, that I almost always, unless they just state outright, I almost always ask, would you prefer male or female? Have you done therapy in the past?
Right.
Did it work for you? What didn't work? So all of that helps give me a sense of what does this client need?
Yeah.
Who are they going to be best suited to work with?
Great.
Yeah.
That's great. And then if someone wanted to contribute to the Hope Fund, which is donor-based, how would they go about doing that? Do they just go to the website okay.
Yeah, you can just go to our website and donate right there.
And that's centerforhopeandrenewal.com?
It's hopeandrenewal.org.
Okay. Close.
Very close.
We'll get that all. We'll get that all up there. I mean, whoever's listening to this will click on it.
And they can learn all about the group work that happens at the center and specialists. Go ahead.
In person versus video, Zoom, all of that. I mean, is most of it in person right now? Or, obviously COVID set some ripples through this, but.
Yeah, COVID really changed the industry significantly by making virtual telehealth an option. We have a mix. So our therapists are in the office seeing clients multiple days a week, but we also have a lot of people who prefer teletherapy just because it's more convenient. In terms of effectiveness, except for children, which we really don't do teletherapy with children, it's not going to be productive.
Yeah.
So with the exception of children, so far, studies are showing that telehealth is just as effective as in person.
That's interesting.
I think often, particularly our therapists that work with couples, they like to at least see them in person to get started, because you pick up so much in the body language and, nothing's from the waist, seen from the waist down.
Right.
So if somebody's kicking their partner under the table, you're not going to know unless they tell you. So there is, that preference to kind of at least get to know their clients initially in person. But then, people just really love the telehealth option.
But your therapists are willing to do it in person?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I know of a couple through the process that were like, I'm just going digital. And to me, that sounded a little, it lost the intimacy of the conversation.
It loses the intimacy with the clients, I think, and it can potentially. But I also think for our group, we like being together, and they get a lot from their relationships with each other in terms of, maybe referring a client to someone else if it makes sense for their needs, or just the collaboration that they have with getting supervision and feedback on different things. So that's a big part of why people join our practice, is because of the collegiality we offer.
And so do you share a building with the church, or is it completely separate?
It's completely separate.
Okay.
So Stanwich built a new church. It's just down the road from where we are, but we have the entire building for therapy.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's
Wait,
nice.
so where are you?
So we're out on Taconic
on
Road.
Taconic.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the old Stanwich Church building. So there's that, just historic chapel.
Oh, so you're in the old building.
Yeah, we're in the old building.
Yeah, sorry,
I
got it backwards.
Yeah, right beside the chapel. And it's perfect. I mean, it's discreet. It's calming for people to drive out there.
It's beautiful out there.
Lovely. So, the location is really ideal for people to come feel like they are in a safe, healing, welcoming space.
It's
we both know that area.
Yes, we do know that area well. It is peaceful nature. What is the vision for the Hope and Renewal Center for the next 5 years?
So we are currently exploring that and defining that with our board, and we've brought in some consultants to help us figure that out. Because, like I said, we truly want to make mental health care available to anyone who needs it.
Yeah.
And what that means is not only having a wide spectrum of therapists available with experience and training in all different areas, but it also obviously means making it affordable.
Right.
That's top of our priority list. And so as thrilled as we are to have the Hope Fund, we're currently exploring, should we be taking insurance? What are the other means by which we could continue to make this as accessible as possible? What can we offer in terms of community events? Particularly, again, I kind of keep coming back to couples, but a lot of couples are a little resistant to get therapy.
Yeah.
Or one partner's resistant and the other one's pushing it. And so we've thought about, okay, let's say we just do an evening, a date night, where we provide, dinner and a glass of wine.
Really?
Yeah. And couples can come and our therapist will do like an hour long, here's how, some tips on improving communication.
I love that.
Tuning into your partner.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic, actually.
Yeah. So we want to offer things like that to our community as well. These little kind of like mental health snacks, for lack of a better word, so people can get a taste of what it is.
Well, lower the guard. I mean, I'm in such a different mode throughout the course of the day.
Yeah.
10 o'clock in the day when we're go. Lindsay hops in here. We set everything up. It's a much different mindset than 7, 8 at night with a glass of wine in front of you. And that's the mindset you probably need for me to open up and, have that conversation.
Yeah.
Well, and also as humans, we evolve. And in marriages, we change as people as we grow. If you have children, that just exacerbates the changes. And having an unbiased professional in the room to talk with you about, hey, you're experiencing these changes and you need to appreciate that they're experiencing the changes is a really important thing.
Yeah.
I mean, for lack of better words here on a Tuesday morning, but it's really important for two people who cohabitate, share life, to have someone helping them through tough times. I mean, so much
100%.
You lose parents. There's so much that goes on in this life that contributes to a relationship working or not working. And the more you don't talk about it within your relationship, you're married, I'm married, the more resentful you get.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
With one another. And then it's like, you don't even know what you're resenting about the person.
You don't even know.
Yeah, right. But to go and have a session with a therapist and be able to feel vulnerable enough to share what you're feeling on the inside that you can't even share with your spouse is, I think, such a benefit. And I'm really so grateful that you all are here in our community providing this work.
Yeah, one of the primary ways we can improve our community for the better is to improve our families.
Yeah.
And by families, I mean folks with kids and folks without,
yes,
and even folks who are single. It's how do we improve the quality of relationships that make this town what it is. So whether that's in couples therapy, family therapy, and, particularly with children and teen mental health, that's something that we've heard talked about just so much more
ad
than
nauseum.
ever. Yeah. Ever since COVID, it's just become a huge
since
issue.
COVID and social media and kids having phones and social media at a younger age, and not really knowing how, not having any rules around it for the most part. It's hard for parents to control, and it so affects their mental health.
Absolutely. But their parents' relationship also affects their mental health.
Right.
Their family's functioning affects their mental health. Sometimes it's really easy to focus on a child who's having behavioral issues or a teenager who won't get off their phone and see that as just the problem.
Right.
When really it's a symptom of the problem. And if you can work with a skilled therapist, they can help parents see the ways in which they're interacting that could be influencing the behavioral issues they have in their children. That's not always the case, but it's often the case.
Well, and I think so many, again, whether you have children or not, whether you're married or not, in these past 4 years, people have really started isolating more and more. Although I'm very extroverted and I couldn't wait to get back out and see people, the majority of my introverted friends don't want to go out and see people ever. And it's just made it so much easier for them to stay isolated, which again contributes so deeply to their mental health being in a good place. So again, it's just great to know that this is right down the street on Stanwich Road and that anyone can use your services, apply to use the services, and talk to you all.
You were talking about changes going forward and possibly taking insurance. And just because I'm a logistics dork, like, how does that work? Like, how do you, I mean, that's just you get an attorney that's used to work. Like, I mean, how do you start the process, behind the scenes of taking insurance?
I mean, so it used to be so much more complicated than it is now.
Oh, that's good.
Which is great. I mean, one of the benefits from, the pandemic is that all of these companies popped up that started making it easier for clinicians and mental health practices to get paneled with insurance companies and start providing that. So that's where we started, is looking basically for kind of a middleman to go between us and the insurance company and help us sort through all the red tape and manage all of the bureaucracy that comes along with taking insurance. Right. So that's how you get started. But again, it's tricky. We want to take it because it makes our therapy more accessible to our clients, and that's our top priority. But clinicians, as we all know, many of them don't take insurance for a reason. It's because their reimbursement rates tend to be increasingly lower. Sometimes they will claw back after they've paid out to
they'll claw back
to a provider.
So the insurance pays you with $100 and then.
Yeah, I mean, it's and they'll audit you. You as a clinician, you have to continually justify why you need to see this person. I mean, it's not based around the health of the individual. In a holistic sense, it's based around the bottom line, and it's unfortunate.
It's such a double-edged sword.
It really is.
I think about it. I'm like, wait, they don't take insurance. That's out of my pocket, not towards the deductible, but and everything. But and then you have to add it all up because your rates might be cheaper than my rates of somebody else, even with the insurance.
Right.
And so, there's a lot behind that, but that's a pain.
It is.
I'm glad it's easier now. You're saying that, so you reach out to a company that just acts as the middleman.
Yeah, and so they walk with us. They help us get our clinicians paneled. They help monitor, all the different requirements of different insurance companies have for clinicians to fulfill. And if there was an audit, they would walk us through that process as well. So they really provide, that sort of support and safety net so that we can focus on the work that we actually focus on. Yeah,
the ultimate goal. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share with us that we haven't asked you about the center? Do you do any fundraising throughout the year?
We do. We do an annual appeal every fall, like a lot of nonprofits, and then we tend to do a targeted fundraiser just for our Hope Fund in the spring. We had an event in April of 2023 at the Greenwich Country Club, and we had a panel at that luncheon on teen mental health. And I was, as a former pastor in this community, I was really moved by the experience in that room. I mean, we've all been to fundraising events and know what they are like. But this one, hearing these experts, so we had two of our therapists, eating disorder specialist, and who was Rania Margie, and Joe Callahan, who oversees all the social workers in the Stanford school system. We also had Marcy Schneider, who founded the Greenwich Center for Adolescent Medicine. And we had Karen Armstrong, who was the creator of the film The Disruptors, which is a documentary about people who have ADHD.
Nancy, right?
Nancy Armstrong, excuse me. That's yes. So we had that panel, and we, they had some pre-submitted questions that they answered. We took questions from the audience. And it was a moment where, as a minister, I felt like we were meeting a need in the community to have this conversation, to just meet that hunger and that desire for people to understand whether they have kids or not. Like, how can we be a more thriving community? Like, how can we love each other better? How can we love our kids better? How can we just live more fulfilling lives? And so I'm like getting a little emotional thinking about it, just because I was so happy to see the way that resonated.
Right. And in this wealthy community, not have everything be about the bottom line, have it really be about the people and about the health of our relationships.
Yeah.
I love
because
that.
At the end of the day, like, that's really what we all want. That's what we all need to have the kind of lives we hope for.
Right. I mean, it's why we're sitting here. That's why we started doing this podcast, was to meet people in our community and share their stories.
Yeah.
Because we haven't, I feel like we've all kind of been hiding in these past 4 years. And we got back to reality outside of COVID. And yet it was it's a new reality. It's not what it used to be. It's different.
Yeah.
And so adjusting to that and learning where people are in their lives now is important and key to the health of our community going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that story about the teen health. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
thank
being
you for coming. I have
here.
1,000
You're
questions, but
welcome.
they're all precise. I'll ask you offline.
You can ask more
Yeah,
questions.
you can please ask.
Well, going from DC
Yeah.
to here,
Yeah.
are there massive differences that you saw in the communities, the needs? But I assume also a ton of similarities. Like, I'm just trying to create a juxtaposition.
Yeah. There's some overlap for sure, but they're also very different. I mean, I started my career on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, at this huge church. I mean, and I was from Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
So I was like,
A little different.
what is this, new world? So it was a baptism by fire in a sense, but I loved it. And
Am I allowed to say good choice of words?
Yeah.
Dad joke pun? Okay.
Yeah, I like it. I'm a fan of dad jokes. Anyway, so I particularly feel called to this area because it actually can be challenging. People are intense and they're demanding and they're high powered and they're used to getting what they want in life. And as a person who likes challenge, that's really fun for me. DC was similar in that regard, but it's also further south. So it was a little bit more laid back, which
Really?
I know people are like, what? I can't even imagine. But
And you weren't just DC, you were DC.
I was
you
in
were
Capitol
right
Hill,
in the
yeah.
middle of
Yeah. So I'm thinking about my congregation in DC, and we called it a purple congregation because we had a mix of, red and blue out there. And yeah. And they really wanted church to be a place where they could kind of escape the intensity of their daily lives.
both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and just hear things that kind of cut through all the noise and could unite them in a way that I think DC is particularly skilled at dividing people. So I'm not sure if that totally answers your question.
No, it did.
but
I mean, it does, and it's actually nice to
Yeah.
hear that there are differences. It's and that you've been through the scope of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think of it sometimes like the intensity of the finance community in this part of the world, and then the intensity of like politics, political and legal was kind of what I experienced in there.
I like the idea of a purple community.
Yeah, it was really fun. I loved it.
But at the end of the day, I mean, whatever political side you're on, we're all the same. We're all human.
100%.
So take the politics out of it. We all have to connect anyhow.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, that's, in my, opinion, is what church or any kind of community gathering should ideally be about, is helping us find the common humanity in each other. And again, like, seek to create the types of relationships that we want in our lives and in our community. And that's where real change happens.
Right.
But I'm envisioning two identical churches, one red, one blue. But were most of the churches purple? I mean, is that, or did you have a division of the two?
Over the course of my career, I had division of the two.
Okay.
Yeah, I worked at a church when I was getting my master's degree, it was very blue.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of challenge, and I don't think it's appropriate for pastors to preach politics. I think my job as a minister, preacher, when I'm up there, is to help people think critically about our world and their choices and behaviors and how do they want to show up.
I'm just envisioning Congress arguing, and do they go to two separate churches, or they go to the same church and they're just different people?
I think in the past, they used to go more to the same church, and it has become more divided, unfortunately.
That's unfortunate.
It is.
Oh. Yeah. Our country's become more divided.
Yeah.
It's been a crazy time.
As we lead into a topic we're not talking about.
No, we're not. I refuse.
That's smart.
I refuse.
Yeah.
Because it divides people.
It does.
It does.
It does.
But the church reconnects them.
Yes.
So.
That's why.
Hopefully.
Yes, exactly. Let us pray. Well, again, thank you, Erin, so much for taking the time to be with us this morning, to share your story and the story of Hope and Renewal, the Center for Hope and Renewal. So we'll share everything that we've learned when we release the episode.
Okay.
And we hope that everyone that is in our community can learn more about the Center for Hope and Renewal. If you don't already, look at it online, hopeandrenewal.org, or give Erin a call. She's here to take your calls and have a free consult so that you can get paired with the right therapist for you.
Rock and roll.
All right.
Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening.
Pleasure.